and welcome to part 6 on my horror DVD collection. Now, it's been a long time coming, so I'll get straight into it, but I'd just like to firstly mention I passed my 100 subscribers mark, so I'm pretty happy now. Yeah, I've got 112 now, so yep. Anyway, first up we've got The Burning, and this is a slasher film released in 1981 by Tony Maylam. He hasn't really done much else. He's got some fashion videos in there, but nothing else. This one is a Region 1, it was only just released on DVD, which is pretty strange because it's got a big cult following. As I said, it's a slasher film and it's very similar to Friday the 13th. It often gets lumped in with that and sometimes is even considered a rip-off of it, but it's interesting to note there's a documentary on here that states this was in production before Friday the 13th. That being said, there are many similarities, like a killer's urban legend campfire story. It takes place on a campground. Kids are being punished for their sins, that kind of thing, but I find this the superior movie out of the two. It revolves around this prank that was played on this mean old caretaker. The kids there, they've just had enough because he's really cruel, and they decide to put a candle and a skull in his room. He wakes up in fright, knocks it over, and it sets the shack on fire and himself too in the process. He's thought dead, but he actually recuperates in hospital and bides his time. He comes back to seek revenge. It's interesting that this film didn't really take off and Friday the 13th did. It's no disrespect to Friday the 13th, but as I said, I find this the superior movie. No sequels to this, wasn't that successful upon release. Maybe that was a blessing in disguise because sequels often Xerox the movie to the point where it becomes a shadow of its former self, you know, a pale imitation of the original film. So maybe it was actually spared the dishonour of that happening to it. Yeah, I really like the film. The setting, the woods and the campground and the lake, it's very atmospheric. The stalk and slash is really good. The killer is really menacing. He's called Cropsy and he's this disfigured burns victim. He's dressed all in black. He has his trademark shears weapon, very imposing and kind of unrelenting. It's got good direction, great cinematography and editing, very well filmed, and some great set pieces. I mean, the raft scene in particular, so much energy to it. Also that conclusion in the mine shaft, it's also excellent. Very, very effective. Yeah, so it's a really great film. It's probably my favourite slasher movie out there, so definitely go out and see if you can find this one because it's a really good film. Next up we've got Cabin Fever, and this is another recent movie from 2002, of course directed by the whiz kid Eli Roth. And it's almost more interesting talking about the director than the actual film because he's become quite famous now and he has his fair share of detractors. And I'll just put that to the people watching. What do you think of Eli Roth? I personally don't mind him because I think he's very enthusiastic and you can tell he has a real love for the genre. He's not just some hack taking dip in the genre to make some quick bucks. He's brought light to the genre. There's a lot of attention on it now. It's kind of had a bit of a resurgence and renewed interest in it. So for that I can forgive him being a bit obnoxious and tooting his own horn, but hey, if I was making horror movies on his budget I'd probably be doing the same thing. This one's kind of like a zombie movie in disguise. It has this bunch of teenagers, these yuppies, going out to a cabin in the woods for some holidaying, and one of them contracts this flesh-eating virus, starts fighting amongst themselves, they don't trust one another, and the group eventually disintegrates. That's where the zombie influence comes in, because in a lot of zombie movies you see that kind of plot line used. I think it's a very good debut. What I like about it is there's lots of homages to horror movies from the 1970s and 1980s. There's a few shots in there like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Cabin is very reminiscent of the one in the Evil Dead movies. In fact, they tried to use that cabin, but that one's of course burned down. The screwdriver in the ear, Dawn of the Dead. So yeah, he knows his horror movies and he likes to put some references in there. The special effects is very good. It's very gross out and over the top. It seems like Eli Roth threw everything in, but the kitchen sink with this, all his ideas. Yeah, I don't mind it, and I don't mind Eli Roth, so yeah, tell me what you think of Eli Roth, but yeah, it's a pretty good movie. Next up we've got Candyman, and this is another quite famous recent horror movie. It's from 1992 and it's directed by Bernard Rose. Of course based on the novel by Clive Barker called The Forbidden. It has a very high standing in horror cinema now. It revolves around another urban legend called the Candyman, and the Candyman is a takeoff of the old Bloody Mary legend we've all heard, whereby you say the entity's name into a mirror a certain amount of times and they'll appear behind you and eviscerate you. This revolves around Virginia Madsen, who's doing this paper on urban legends, folklore and that kind of thing, and she decides to travel to this place called Cabrini Green, a housing area for these poor black people. And in that area there's a legend that centres around the Candyman, and there's been some murders recently. She's a bit skeptical, but she goes in to investigate and she finds out there's more credence to the myth. I think this is a really good film. The direction is excellent and the story is also really good too. It has a lot of metaphors. The black people in Cabrini Green can be seen as the slaves, the white people can be seen as the oppressors, and Candyman's this instrument of vengeance coming back to seek blood for all the wrongs that have been done. The backstory is that Candyman was once a man who was tortured and killed. Played very well by Tony Todd. He's very iconic. Tall, and he wears a long flowing coat. He has a hook for a hand, and he's very enigmatic and he seems very powerful. Just one of those villains that you seem to like. So on that basis, I think it's a really good film. I don't think it's a masterpiece though. I think it falls a little flat. I think sometimes the pacing is a bit too slow. It kind of drags. Some of the set pieces are a bit corny sometimes, but I still find it an excellent movie. Yeah, it's just got a great story with lots of underlying themes and messages like social stigmas and racism and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a really good film. If you haven't seen it, which I don't think there would be many, I urge you to go out and see this one. It's a really good film. Next up we have probably one of the most controversial, banned, infamous movies out there, and it's Cannibal Holocaust, directed by Italian Ruggero Deodato and released in 1979. And I'd just like to firstly point out that this is a European 2-disc Ultra Bit edition, so it's completely uncut. Now, as I said, this movie has an infamous standing in the horror. If you have an interest in the genre, you've probably heard of this movie. It attained a mythical status now. It's always referred to as that movie, Cannibal Holocaust, because of the extremes it was willing to go to. It centres around a documentary film crew which specialise in Mondo footage. Very similar to the Blair Witch. If you don't know what Mondo footage is, it's documentary or real life footage of a sensational nature, so violence or sex or just general bizarreness. And it was of course created by some Italians when Mondo Cane was released in the 60s. And yeah, as I said, the crew in this specialised in that kind of stuff, so they decided to go out to the Amazon to try and capture some real life cannibals on film. They basically show disregard for the environment and everything in it, the people. They're very arrogant and cruel. They're not getting the footage they want, so they decide to artificially create it by tormenting the local tribes. They light one tribe on fire, the shacks and everything, just to get footage of them running around in mayhem. They rape a girl because they know the repercussion for this will be she'll be killed, so they can get some more violent footage. The crew that's gone in to film all this footage eventually goes missing, and extraction crew is sent in to retrieve the footage. They screen it back in the US, and ultimately they come to the decision to release it or not. This is an underlying message throughout the movie, is the media's hunger for degradation and violence and all that kind of thing. It's very, very full on. The gore is very realistic and disturbing and nauseating, very effective. And it's not just prosthetics and crayon blood, it's real life stuff. It looks real. As you probably already know, it has animal killings in there. I think there's about 6 in total, so if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, you probably want to avoid it. But that being said, I think it's a very important film. I think it does have a message, which is who really is the savages, the media or the cannibals. It's a bit primitive, and it's not really explored to a great depth, and a lot of people would probably question whether it's just a hollow message and excuse for violence, but regardless of that, it's in there anyway. I think it's extremely effective. I mean, it still retains its power even today. I don't think this film would ever fail to provoke a reaction from anyone, whether it's good or bad. So on that basis, I think it succeeds at what it sets out to be. So yeah, Cannibal Holocaust, the infamous Cannibal Holocaust. That's probably going to have to conclude part 6. Look for part 7 in the future, and thank you for watching.